Welcome to the Prime Health Podcast with your host, Dr. Derek Barron. Dr. Barron interviews doctors, wellness experts, and healthcare leaders who are revolutionizing how we approach health and longevity. The Prime Health Podcast explores breakthrough science, personal and patient stories, and practical insights that are shaping the future of health and wellness. So sit back, listen in, and prepare to transform how you think about your path towards Prime Health with Dr. Barron and his special guest.
Welcome back to the Prime Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Derek Barron, and I'm here to bring you cutting-edge insights and practical strategies from leading health experts for your journey from Prime Health in life and business. Now, today's episode is particularly exciting because we have Kim Downey as a guest to talk to you about building connections and creating advocacy for healthy doctors. She's got some great stories to share, and it's really important. I'm glad that we have her as a guest. Now, but before we dive in, a message from our sponsor, Grow Solutions, because we are here helping health and wellness professionals reclaim their evenings and weekends while building their practice that they've always envisioned. Grow Solutions works on getting rid of the headaches in the practice, whether it's new patient lead generation or clients, communication breakdowns that may take place, maybe some operational chaos that you have. So we've got proven systems and frameworks to help with that. And yes, we do help practices implement AI. It's coming. We want to help you get on the cutting edge of that. So again, you can get back in life instead of always stuck behind your computer with practice. Grow Solutions is not an agency or vendor. We are a growth partner. So if you've ever said this or thought this, I'm too busy to grow, too slow to scale, or too overwhelmed to fix it, we can help you with that. Just drop the word grow in below. We'll reach out to you, or you can connect with me on any social platform that makes you happy. But you're here for one purpose, and that's to meet our guest today. So I'm excited to introduce you to Kim Downey, founder of Stand Up for Doctors. Kim is a physical therapist, 3-time cancer survivor, thank God, and a fierce advocate for physician well-being. As an ambassador for Medicine Forward, the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, and the Clinician Burnout Foundation, she brings deep insight into both the clinician and clinical and human sides of medicine. She amplifies the voices of doctors and patients addressing challenges like burnout, moral injury, and loss of autonomy. Kim's mission is to foster connection and advocacy for healthier doctors and stronger healthcare systems. Kim, I want to welcome you to the Prime Health Podcast.
Thank you, Derek. I'm honored to be here.
We're going to have a blast. We've talked before. You've got some amazing stories, and I can't wait for you to share it with us. So I will ask this. What was the spark that said Stand Up for Doctors has to exist?
As you said, I was practicing as a physical therapist, and then I had cancer 3 times. And on the tail end of what was 2 years of constant medical issues, I showed up for what I thought was finally going to be a routine imaging visit. And I found out that my doctor had died, and he had been incredible. And I came to know that he had taken his own life. And I felt a calling to support doctors. So in a nutshell, that's how it all started.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry for the loss of your friend, the doctor. I'm sure it's a great loss, but there's many more that are unfortunately in that same position. Hopefully we'll be able to cover that, why that's taking place today. So from your personal experiences, both positive or painful, that shaped your commitment to physicians' well-being and advocacy. So, I know that was a traumatic experience, but you're doing this because you want to make sure others don't experience the same thing. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. And we're recording this on the eve of September 17th, which is National Physician Suicide Awareness Day. And I think it's horrible that there actually needs to be such a day. There's statistics that we think are underreported that say 300 to 400 physicians a year take their own life. And it's more than a doctor a day, and it just shouldn't be like that.
Oh my. Are there statistics that it slants towards one physician practice style? Is it family care? Is it orthopedics? Is it cancer? Are there statistics that say which doctor falls into which category?
Well, some would say that female physicians are at even higher risk than male physicians, and surgeons are one category. And dentists in the past have also been up there as well.
Yeah. And it's so hard because they do so good, they mean so good, but for a majority of the time, the positions they're placed in, the mandates that they're under, the time restraints that they're under to take care of somebody in 7 to 10 minutes is very, very difficult to do. So, there's these inborn traits that's under the rooftop essentially of the four walls that they're in. So it's very difficult. You kind of hit on it, Kim, but what are some of the big misconceptions that people have about doctors? I think everybody thinks, oh, life is great. They make a whole lot of money. They get to turn on and off whenever they want. But, besides beepers back in the day when they would always go off, what's that big misconception that people have about doctors?
Well, I have a friend who eloquently shared with me she was a nurse and then went on to become a lawyer and had to leave because she developed Parkinson's syndrome. And she said that doctors are expected to be superhuman and not complain because of their salary. Many people don't have empathy for them because they think a doctor's life would be the ultimate.
It's a very interesting take. I remember being in my church and in a small group with my pastor who we became very good friends with. And I said, Dave, how is it that you ever have a bad day? Because all you do is you help other people. And he goes, Derek, what you hear about is the positives, just like physicians. You hear about the positive. You don't hear about the negatives of the job, because as a physician, you're not just practicing your medicine, you're practicing as a counselor a lot of the times as well. So it's a very difficult place to be put into, and it's unfortunate they're pigeonholed into that.
Well, and also even the aspect of when we say superhuman, you could say that relates to pastors as well, that there are some similarities there, that you're put on a pedestal, pastor or a doctor, and you're almost looked at in some ways through a microscope, right? And that you have a perfect life, you should have a perfect life, things don't go wrong, and that's not the case. They're human. And actually in our, we'll bring up about our book, but I have a collaborative book, White Coats, Courageous Hearts, True Stories of Doctors Reclaiming Their Humanity in a System That Challenges It. And it's true stories of 15 doctors. And there's all kinds of stories, and doctors are human too. And we're actually working on the second book in our series, and our working title is White Coats, Human Hearts. Doctors are human. Pastors are human.
Yeah.
They bleed just like we do.
Yeah.
They have feelings just like we do.
Absolutely. And it's hard. Like, you have to go, no matter what's going on in your day, you've got to shut off what's happening. Every single patient, you could be in between. When I first worked with an orthopedic surgeon, he would go through 5 patients at a time, and then he would go back to his office and deal with the stress of practice, and he would come back through his patients. So people only understand that, that initial interaction of, I'm in the treatment room, I'm in the consultation room, but they just don't know just like us, we get in the car and we drive to work, and hopefully everything goes okay. But somebody says something, or somebody waves to us, and, with only one finger in the air because they're having a bad day. So we have to, be very considerate of that. So in regards to your book, Kim, White Coats, Courageous Hearts, can you share a story that really resonates with you from your first book?
Sure. One that I've been sharing because it was a surprise to me, because I knew all of these doctors. They were all guests on my YouTube channel, and they were welcome to write a chapter that related to what we talked about on my Stand Up for Doctors YouTube channel, or they could write about something else. And Dr. David Alfrey, who had written his own book, he's a retired anesthesiologist, Saving Grace, What Patients Teach Us About Life, Death, and the Balance in Between. It's a beautiful book. And when I recorded our episode, we talked about that. What he chose to write about here was substance use disorder in anesthesiologists. And that's quite a large thing that I wasn't aware of, and I would assume the average person walking around isn't aware of it either.
Yeah.
And basically, when you're an anesthesiologist, just like all doctors have so much stress and pressure, and sometimes they lean towards addiction. It could be alcoholism, it could be anything. When you're an anesthesiologist, you're around anesthesiology drugs all day until you have the means to access them, the means and your understanding to know how to use them. So there's a whole intervention process and protocol when you suspect that an anesthesiologist is using the medications. And what's really difficult then is sometimes when they're caught, they need to go through a treatment program. And what I've shared is if you become addicted to alcohol when you're in recovery, you can try to stay away from alcohol and avoid alcohol. when you're an anesthesiologist to come back and practice,
Mm.
you're surrounded by the same drugs all the time.
Mm.
And one of Dr. Alfre's friends who had lost his license said he was like a kid in a candy store. So to relieve the stress or pressure or unprocessed trauma in their life, and what makes that even more challenging is that when me as a physical therapist, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1988, and I've worked with premature babies in the neonatal intensive care unit, and I've worked with 100 years olds, and I've worked with people who have stroke, who've had heart attacks, who have special needs as far as cerebral palsy, many different things. Doctors need to choose a specialty, whether it's primary care, whether they're going to be a surgeon, an anesthesiologist. So they go to residency and then fellowship, depending on the specialty they need to do that. So if you've already become an anesthesiologist and you're experiencing an addiction issue, you can't just say, okay, well, I want to stay away from it. Now I'll be a pediatrician. Like you're already, doctors are in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt coming out of school. You would have to do a whole other residency. And most of the time that isn't even practical. So these are just challenges that the average person has no awareness of.
Yeah. You're bringing some great points to me in that regards, not thinking about that, from it doesn't pay for an alcoholic to be a bartender. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So for the anesthesiologist to go right back into it, it's very hard. Yeah. And to go back into school, to go into pediatrics is a big step for that. So, there's a couple of words that are buzzwords that may be associated with what you do, and that would be burnout. So what some of the signs and symptoms of what burnout is for the physicians that you've had conversations with?
Sure. Well, that can look different in every single person, and it can even look different in different episodes within the same physician. And one thing is there's so much talk about burnout. That term turns some physicians off because they feel like burnout is related to like a personal failure, where they feel like a lot of these issues are system problems. And they feel that moral injury is a better term, which was coined by when veterans were coming back to the United States and they were suffering because they had to do things overseas that went against their moral values, and they were struggling internally with that. Well, today, physicians are faced with some of those same issues. They want to help their patients. They know how to help their patients, and sometimes they're prevented from doing so. For instance, if they know that their patient needs surgery, but they make the patient go to 6 weeks of physical therapy. When I am a physical therapist, but sometimes if you know that surgery is the answer, then that's difficult for the patient because they know it's not going to help and they don't want to see the patient suffer. Or if they know what medication their patient needs, but they're forced to try other kinds of cheaper medications before they can get their patient the medication they need. And sometimes patients suffer complications from those medications. So those things can be really stressful for physicians to deal with. And that's kind of moral injury. Now, anyone can be burnt out from a job at any stage of their career. So that's not unique to physicians. But some of the signs that physicians or anyone, when you're experiencing burnout, sometimes you might be angry. You might, feel that you're angry all the time. You might either lose or gain more of an appetite. Some people have more physical symptoms that their hair might starting falling out. They might have digestive issues. They might not be able to experience joy or pleasure in things that used to bring them joy or pleasure. They might have trouble sleeping. Those are a few of the things that you might recognize. They might be depressed. They might have anxiety. Any of those can occur independently or in conjunction with feeling burnt out.
Okay. So the opposite end of, well, let me come to this question first. When those people are having the burnout or the moral injury aspect of it, you kind of said, depression, probably the first one that sets in. Family members are seeing that. Do you have some practical steps that the doctors can take to help avoid that or help it become more manageable?
Well, one thing that we're trying to get the message out there is that asking for help and seeking help is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Doctors are told, put your head down and just keep going. They're told, that they should be perfect, the perfectionism, you know how to do this. So the part of the struggle, it comes from everyone else thinking that doctors are okay and should be okay, not seeing it, but the physicians themselves thinking I'm smart, I should be able to figure this out, and not thinking they need help themselves, or that would be admitting or feeling like they're failing.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I would say is we're trying to get the message out there that seeking help is a sign of strength, and that it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable and let pieces of yourself show. That if you, Dr. Joe Sherman in our YouTube episode, and also, in the book, I believe spoke to who am I underneath this armor we put on as physicians.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just putting on this false face of everything is okay, nobody can help you and you can't help yourself.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, if you're struggling, that it is a sign of strength to reach out and just tell somebody, anyone. Dr. Amna Shabir has shared that when you're feeling really low, even asking for help can feel like too much work, but you just have to. And the first step is tell one person, whether it's a spouse, a partner, a colleague, a friend, a pastor, a boss, a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, anyone who you feel comfortable reaching out to. And if you don't, there are sources out there. The Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, as we've mentioned, there's a physician support line. There's a suicide hotline. So if you don't know anyone personally, there are resources that you can be connected with.
Yeah. Kim, are you hearing statistics like it's continuing to go up, or are we getting a plateau mark, or is it continuing to be on the rise where physicians are still having issues of being burnt out, the moral injury, and ultimately taking their own life?
Well, it seems like it was ramping up until the pandemic, and then that's when things really broke open. Because I was practicing as a clinician at the time. I'm guessing you were practicing as a clinician at the time. So when you think about doctors, like all of us, I know I was working in a school, so we shut down for a few months, but when you go back or think about the principal of the school, like all of us in these positions, we're trying to keep ourselves safe. And this is right even before the vaccines. We're trying to keep our family safe. We're trying to keep our patients or the children safe. We're trying to keep our coworkers safe. And so if you're a supervisor, then you even have to try to keep all of the people working for you safe. So there were so many burdens, and we were so scared, and people were dying during the pandemic, and doctors were dying during the pandemic. So there was so much fear around that time, plus overwhelm of being work, having more patients to see, or even after the heat of the pandemic started to simmer down when the vaccines were available, then there was an influx of patients who would avoid going to the doctor during the height of the pandemic that now had even more, like stage 4 cancer instead of stage 1 or 2. Or things like that their issues were even more serious because they tried to stay home as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a lot of things. So it got the worst, like during those pandemic years. Now, one thing is that it did get so bad that in a sense things kind of broke open, and the doctors did start talking about, because you didn't hear about this before the pandemic. So some specialties had to take a pause, and if there were like elective surgeries and things like that, they weren't practicing, or some weren't going to the office. So then they started to try to resource themselves, they started looking online. What do I need? What could help me? And some doctors found coaching. So they went and received coaching themselves, and then some went on to, it really made a huge difference in their life, and then they became coaches to support other doctors. So that over the past few years is a transition that has happened, and that is a good thing, because now there are doctors talking about these things. And that's what I say on my YouTube channel. I say every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. And I recently interviewed a doctor who is in recovery, And when you're actually taught, and he was an anesthesiologist, and he actually shared that he didn't use the anesthesiology drugs, that he thought that would keep him safe, and he used heroin. And he goes, obviously that did not turn out well, right? I mean, you say it tongue in cheek, and he kind of had a sarcastic chuckle when he said that as well. So to know that so every time a doctor shares that, or we've had doctors on that have attempted to take their own life, and when they share these things, so a doctor knows they're not alone. That's what I say, is you're never alone.
Mm-hmm.
And when they share these stories, they're like, me too. Yeah. So those are the things that are helping, is doctors talking about that. So I believe statistics are coming out now that are saying for this first time, because the burnout rate statistics were upwards of in the 60s, like 65% of all doctors. So I've recently seen some statistics that show that in the 40s. But you could also say, well, that's still horrible that almost half of your doctors walking around are feeling burnt out, and that's not okay. Like, they can't keep going and give you their best. Yeah. We say everyone wins when physicians are well. Dr. Kathy Stepien had said that, and I repeat that. And if your doctor isn't doing well physically and emotionally, they can't give you the best care. So that's why we all need to care.
Yeah. That's a great point. And what's that quote again from that doctor?
That everyone wins when physicians are well.
Yeah, I love that. So, and if you think about that from your and I perspective, when we were in practice and these physicians that are going through this, how often did you have a patient come in and say, hey, Derek, hey, Kim, how are you doing? Not too often. So, and we're not asking people to flip the switch and not do that, but they're not. And the truth is, should they be thinking about us? Not necessarily. I mean, they're there to get fixed, but every once in a while, how are you doing is okay. I mean, it's always great at Christmas time. I love Christmas cookies. That's a great time. But other than that, it's hard. So, yeah.
Well, you know what? As I think I mentioned, we're working on book 2, and I just wrote about that. And I said that doctors are expected to ask their patients, how are you doing? Yeah. But who is asking the doctors how you're doing? I wrote that within the last 24 hours.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes. And so if you see it in my book,
love it.
You know where it came from.
Yeah.
But also it is important for us to think about doctors as human, and to take time to thank a doctor. I've interviewed emergency room physicians who have told me that they go to work not knowing if they're making a difference. And you would think, that's crazy. They're literally saving lives every day, but they don't get that thank you. Like, doctors have literally told me that they've saved patients' lives, and they don't get a thank you at all. But what they hear about are the bad things, or say a day or so later, what they dread is if an emergency room doctor hears, oh, do you remember Mrs. Smith from 2 days ago? I know it'd be something like, they say, you should have ordered this test, you should have done this procedure, you should have done this or that, where they're doing the best they can, at the time, and trying to make those best decisions. And no one is perfect, and no one can get it right 100% of the time. But doctors feel like and they're kind of taught and trained that in society, shares that there's no room for error.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I like for the clinics and the clinicians we work with, it's important that we do reputation and reviews for them. And the purpose in that, from a business perspective, is it helps you from what we call local SEO. So if somebody is searching for, orthopedic surgeon, Chicago, Illinois, reviews can help you pull up. But the truth is, I want it so the docs can read the positive reviews of what people say, because they don't take the time, like, oh, we got a new review. Okay, sit down tonight with your cup of tea and read through your reviews. And Dr. Chris, the one that you and I spoke about, that's in Connecticut, he's got some of the most amazing reviews. And I say, Chris, when you have a bad day, because you have them, I said, take some time, go through your reviews again, and ask the next person for another review, because it makes them feel good. Just like you're saying, it's not happening enough. Yeah. So Kim, when you went through your personal battle with cancer, I'm so very happy that you've, come through it on the end 3 times. So that's great, but you lost your physician towards the end of that, and you turned to advocacy. What surprised you about trying to do advocacy work?
Well, it continues to surprise me, I will say,
Okay.
because I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't plan on doing any of this. So I'm learning as I go.
Okay.
And I had ended up with a physician coach, Dr. Michael Hirsch, because his blog had showed up on my Facebook feed. And this is when my doctor was still alive, and I had been reading his post for 9 months. And my doctor died in the fall 3 years ago. And that December, Michael shared he was celebrating his year of blogging. So I reached out and congratulated him, and we started talking. And he really helped me process and accept a lot of things. And then he connected me on LinkedIn. And I was hoping maybe I could talk to some doctors who would help me help my own doctors. So in conversations with them, they weren't necessarily able to find direct ways for me to help my own doctors because they said they thought I could make a bigger impact outside of the system. But I was saying, I don't care. I don't want to do that. Like they'd say, I think they always meant to make a bigger impact. So I'm like, I just want to help my doctors.
Yeah.
But as I was talking to them, I would find ways to help or support them, or I seemed to know who they'd want to be connected with. So I'd say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. So now it's evolved. That was the spring of 2023. So now we're recording this the end of the summer 2025. And they've called me like the world's greatest connector of doctors, a super connector, a central hub, because now I'm connected with, I'd say, almost 16,000 doctors.
Oh my gosh.
And and it's like, so that's I don't know if you call it a gift or something that I didn't know I had, is connecting people.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. So if you're a connector, then how can you say other doctors or patients or other healthcare professionals can get involved in the work that you do for the advocacy?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm continuing to figure that out. So sometimes we figure it out through individual conversations, because I am planning a physician retreat for the fall of 2026. So I have a website and I have a Substack newsletter, and all of the things are called Stand Up for Doctors. So I almost feel like I want to build an international Stand Up for Doctors coalition of doctors and patients, because I feel like some of these changes that need to happen, if only doctors are raising their voice, it's never going to happen. And if some things require legislative changes, it can't just be doctors showing up in the voting booths. So we need patients to understand, and we need them to care. So one thing anyone can do is thank a doctor, and that helps. We had a big push for Doctors Day, which is March 30th, for anyone to thank a doctor. And that was, you could send them an email, send them a note in the mail. When you see them, say thank you. But I also say anytime is a good time to thank a doctor. And I was talking to doctors too. I'm like, even if you are a doctor, how much a colleague would appreciate a thank you from you, a heartfelt thank you, like, hey, that was a good catch in the ER, instead of just, kind of condemning a decision that a doctor made, to celebrate them as well. So thanking a doctor is one thing. And again, just getting in touch with me, and we'll kind of figure this out together.
Okay. I'll make sure I share all of your contacts and stuff where they can do that, as well as where people can get your book. So if we look at your business, as you're saying, you've accidentally fallen into entrepreneurship. So where would you say your focus is on in your business? What are you trying to do with it right now?
Well, to this point, I haven't monetized it, but now it's costing me money because I had to become an LLC for the retreat, and things like that. And I've needed help processing my YouTube channel episodes. So Michael Hirsch has called it my jobby, because it's as much work as a job, but since I don't get paid, it's a hobby. So one time as I'm actually trying to figure all of that out. But one struggle is because it has to be ways that really deeply resonate with me, in ways that I can add value to other people. Okay. So that's another thing that I'm figuring out. So right now, I'm really just trying to get the word out. Like, I want the world to know that doctors are struggling. And if every single person is aware of that, it's basically every person in the universe, like, things could change now if we were all kind to each other. And for everyone to be aware that we're all impacted by trauma. So sometimes healthcare leaders aren't sympathetic to their employees because they've experienced trauma and they're like, well, just get on with it. But the part of the reason they act the way they do is they haven't realized that they need to process their own trauma, so they don't show up for their employees in a way that helps their mental health.
Right.
And the same thing with physicians, right? That they've experienced trauma too. And if they haven't processed, they might think even to their patients, well, they should just suck it up, right? Or it's not that bad. But one thing I learned, I had interviewed Dr. Akimia Seraf, and she's a trauma-informed coach for physicians. And she shared that trauma is something that happens too much, too fast, too soon when you're under-resourced. And I feel like that's so important to understand, because I feel like I had experienced some things at different times in my life, but I was always okay. And I would say because I was I've been lucky enough to be well-resourced in my life, and there was enough time between the episodes of things that happened for me to recover. But this is exactly what she was saying: too much, too fast, too soon. Yeah. And by the end, I was not well-resourced. So I think these are just things that everyone, if they understand for themselves, if you've experienced trauma, talk to somebody, get some help, because it affects how you show up for yourself, how the way you show up for the people in your life. And we just all need to understand that, whether we're a patient, a doctor, or a healthcare leader.
Yeah. All great points in that. So from the work that you're doing, the advocacy work, it's making a difference. I'm going to ask two questions about this. The first question is, have you heard any success stories from physicians maybe handing out the book or passing it around that says, you know what, I was too afraid to stand up for myself. I read the book, or I spoke with somebody that heard about your podcast. So can you share a success story that came from the advocacy work that you're doing?
Well, one actually, interestingly, is the very first. So I reached out to the first 20 doctors who were guests on my YouTube channel, and 15 wrote a chapter. One wasn't a physician and he didn't have the bandwidth, and the other ones wrote beautiful endorsements in the book. And the very first one is Dr. Jillian Riggart, and said that I nearly lost my own life to suicide, and this book would have saved a lot of years of suffering and isolation due to guilt and shame, thinking that I was weak, broken, and alone. So for her, just having this, it helped her. And another doctor who wrote a chapter in here is Dr. Tony Avellino. He's a pediatric neurosurgeon, and he had written a book, Saving Grace, so that was David Avery. Dr. Tony Avellino was Finding Purpose, a neurosurgeon's journey of hope and healing. And he had shared that it's not the hundreds of kids' lives that keep you up at night. It's the few that you don't, through an honest mistake or the disease process. And he had been in the process of taking his own life, and he reversed it. And he had written an article on Kevin MD, and I found him after my doctor died, and he asked if I wanted to talk, and we had a beautiful conversation, and I featured him on my YouTube channel. And then he asked if I wanted to collaborate on a Kevin MD article with him, and he wanted to call it A Patient Reached Out to a Doctor, and They Helped Each Other Heal. And we wrote that, and then he has a chapter in our book, and we did a Kevin MD article and podcast. So it's very healing for each of us, because I had a complication, and I also had some poor experiences. I've had amazing physicians, and I've had some challenging experiences. So when I get to talk to another doctor and confidentially kind of share that story, it helps me when it validates your experience. And for doctors, it's the same thing. They've had all kinds of, and they feel bad when there's a complication. They're trying to help people, and they feel horrible when something happens. But sometimes they're prevented from having open and honest conversations. They might be told, or they have to circle the wagons or things like that. So for them to be able to confidentially even talk to a patient, compliant with HIPAA regulations and everything, but just sharing some of their own struggles with someone that is listening. And I think in some ways it helps that I'm not a therapist or a coach. I'm not trying to analyze them. I'm not taking notes, right?
Yeah.
That it's really been healing for everyone involved.
Okay. I love it. I wasn't sure where this was going to go, but I've learned a lot from this podcast, really, and to make me think. I think I thought it on the end. I remember during COVID, I was helping a friend in his practice, and I had a woman that came in, different in cultural components. So I won't speak to that much, but there was different in cultural components. She came in, and I could just tell she was off. And as a chiropractor, I would have adjusted her, gone through an exam, adjusted her, and I said, can I ask you a question? She goes, yeah, sure. I said, are you okay? And she goes, no, I'm not. My brother just, committed suicide because of COVID issues and stress and all that kind of stuff. So we sat there for 30 minutes, talked. And I said, would you like me to still do an exam? No, I think I'm good. That's all I needed. So it was a great situation. So they're like, can a physician in a hospital take that time? No, my friend was mad that I wasn't running through patients, but that woman needed help. And in that same reverse, just think of if a patient came in, looked at the affect of the doctor and said, hey doc, let's shut the door. Are you doing okay? That'd be a great change. And I think
and even if they won't, and every doctor sets their own personal boundaries and they have a right to do that.
Yeah.
And some will really, actually, patients, because of the work I'm doing, have shared with me that they've asked their doctor how they're doing.
Oh, good.
And they've actually shared some of the things, that their doctors have shared. Again, not using names, or they haven't used names or anything, but just that their doctor did share a little. Or even if a doctor has very firm boundaries with that, they'll certainly appreciate the fact that you asked them. So I wouldn't take it personally if they don't, give you a heartfelt answer.
Right.
But actually, another friend I have was so grateful to a doctor that he brought him a little gift. And he said the doctor almost seemed like taken aback or embarrassed. I guess he doesn't really get thank yous or gifts, and he didn't even know how to respond, but he absolutely appreciated it.
Yeah. Well, you're doing great work, that is for sure. And if you're saying you're helping physicians, clinicians, and you're helping patients at the same time, so that's good. It's making a big impact, which is what we all would like to have. So I'm going to share all the links to your book, to your website, to your LinkedIn profile, all of those things. But if somebody wants to get a hold of you and learn more about what you can do and how they may be able to help in advocacy or be a guest on your show, how would you like them to get in touch with you?
I would say LinkedIn is the easiest way. I pretty much live on LinkedIn. So if you're sharing my LinkedIn profile,
Yes.
I'm happy to connect and chat with people. And that's where you'll find me most of the time.
Okay. I promise you I will do that for sure. So 2 last questions here as we kind of wrap this down, Kim. The first one is, and maybe we could, well, it depends on how you answer this. I always ask people like an overall health question. In other words, what's one piece of advice that if you could give that could affect everyone's health in a positive way, what advice would that be?
Well, given our conversation today, I would focus this a little more on emotional health, right? And for everyone to always keep in mind that health doesn't just mean physical health, and to take a moment and pause. And any of us can have a stressful day, doctor or not, and to take a pause and think, how am I really doing? What do I need in this moment? What would help me? And I actually saw someone tagged me in a Kevin MD post, and it was a med student who wrote something about like 10, 10, 10. Like, what can I do in the next 10 seconds to feel better? And maybe it's just deep breathing. What can I do in the next 10 minutes? And that might be a pause to go to the bathroom, to get a drink of water, right? And then it could be, what can I do in the next 10 hours, which might be taking a walk. You might be hungry, making sure you have a nutritious meal, something like that. So I would say that 10, 10, 10, and I just heard that today.
I love that. 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 hours. Very good. I might have to do that yet today. We'll see. Thank you for sharing that as well. So, Kim, you are a guest on the Prime Health podcast. I always finish off with, what is your definition of Prime Health?
Well, again, I would just say that it would be holistic health, that encompasses physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, that there's many facets, and that we shouldn't be neglecting any of them.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Kim, you've been a special guest. We typically have physicians or clinicians, but if it weren't for you, we would have less physicians or clinicians on this show. So I appreciate that. And hopefully, as some of our listeners read this, they'll understand the importance of sharing this. Of course, for you and I, we want our messages to get out. It's important that we do that. But I always tell people, and I believe this so strongly, as you listen to this, Whether you are a clinician or whether you're a patient, a general population person, who do you know that could benefit from listening to this story or watching this story? Because it can help one person. That's the benefit of doing this. We know it can help more. So we ask you to share this, especially to that one person, whether it was at church, your hairstylist, your massage therapist that's kind of having that struggle point, or if it's your pediatrician that's in your family. Just see if you can share this with them so they can learn more. And that way they can get in touch with Kim and learn more about her books. And again, we're going to share that link below. So of course, I'll say share our subscribe to our podcast. We'd love to have you as a guest. But until next time, as I wrap it up, remember that true wellness is a journey we are all on together. Now, whether you are taking charge of your own health or you're guiding others in theirs, every step forward matters. I always say, please stay committed to your Prime Health journey. And again, Kim, thank you so very much for being a guest on the Prime Health Podcast.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Derek. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed our conversation.